Hello, everyone. Today we are going to present our project titled Learning Anxiety and Participation in a A2 Virtual English Class, a theoretical analysis. This project was developed as part of the course Foreign Language Acquisition and Learning. Our group members are Lady Angélica Escudero Pozo, Geraldine Cuartas Muñoz, Sharaina Leimi Lorza Ramírez, Chloe Pulgarín, and Alejandro David Velázquez Teherán. In this presentation, we will analyze how anxiety affects students' participation and learning process in English class. Okay, now we are talking about educational problem. Our group chose to focus on a common problem in English learning. Students often feel anxious and lack confidence when speaking. This usually happens because they're afraid of making mistakes or being judged by others. When students feel this way, they tend to avoid participating in class, especially in speaking activities. Instead of practicing, they prefer to stay quiet, which affects their learning process. Over time, this limits their ability to improve their speaking skills and communicate effectively in English. Theories in foreign language acquisition. To better understand this problem, our group looked at three key theories in second language acquisition. First, we have Krashen affective filter hypothesis, which explains how emotions like anxiety can block learning. Second, the input hypothesis, also by Krashen, highlights the importance of receive understandable language input. Finally, Long's interaction hypothesis emphasizes how communication and interaction help learners develop their language skills. So, together, these theories allow us to see how emotions, exposure to language, and interactions all play an important role in learning English. Now, let's look at the effective filter hypothesis proposed by Stephen Krashen. This theory suggests that emotion play a very important role in a language learning. For example, when students feel anxious, embarrassed, or afraid of making mistakes, it becomes harder for them to learn. Crash explained this using the idea of an effective filter, which acts like a mental barrier. When this filter is high, students cannot fully process the language they hear or read. That's why it is important for teachers to create a supported environment where students feel safe, confident, and comfortable participating.
Hello, I am going to talk about the impostership proposed up by Stephanie Craig. This theory explains the language learning happens when students receive a comparison input with the main languages that um, the language they can understand, but that is living about the current level. In the other words, the input should not to be too easy or too difficult, but what is a little challenging, so the student can learn when vocabulary is structured. For example, a teacher can use a sentences but include new words support by context, imagine or gesture, they help students start to learning naturally. The teacher can apply this theory by giving clear explanation, explanation using contextual samples, provide visual support, and creative meaningful language activity. In conclusion, understanding message is essential for effective language learning. Interaction hypothesis developed by Michael Lamb, this theory highlighting in the importance of interaction of communication in language learning. According to this idea, students improve their student skills when they actively interact with the other and try to understand each other. This process is called as a negotiation of meaning, where a student asking a question, clearing information, correct misunderstanding. For example, during a conversation, when a student might asking, "Can you repeat that?" or "Do you can?" or "What do you mean?" This help this help meant then learning new vocabulary and import that is understood. Teachers can apply this theory by encourage discussion, by work growth activities, and communicate tasks that simulation real life style. In conclusion, interaction play a key role helping students learning and language effective. Thank you for asking.
Observer virtual class. The session that we observed was an 8 to 11 level English class. The main topic of this lesson was the pronunciation of the ed ending, especially in the English verbs. During the class, the teacher used a PowerPoint presentation with some examples and explanations to help the students understand the topic. Also, he asked several questions to encourage participation. We can observe that some students participate actively in the class, but others prefer to be quiet and just listen to the class. Problem observed in this session. The main problem that we can saw in the virtual class was student anxiety and lack of confidence when speaking English. In this class was like 60 students, but just a small group decided to participate in the speaking activities. The rest of the group preferred to be quiet and didn't answer the questions when the teacher asked. Maybe they know answers but prefer to be quiet.
Okay, possible causes of the problem. In our analysis, we identified that learner anxiety is not accidental. According to the affective vector hypothesis, several factors raise this mental barrier. The main causes are the fear of making mistakes in front of others, a lack of confidence in their own abilities, limited vocabulary which makes them feel stuck, and finally, a lack of supportive environment to practice without being judged.
Okay, participation is essential because, as the interaction hypothesis states, we learn by negotiating meaning. When students participate, they improve their pronunciation, expand their vocabulary in real contexts, develop communication skills, and most importantly, they build the confidence needed to move from a A2 level to higher proficiency.
Now I will present the conclusions. This task allowed us to understand how language acquisition theories can be applied in real classroom situations. In particular, the affected filter hypothesis help us see how emotions like anxiety and also lack of confidence can affect students' performance. When students feel nervous, they avoid any kind of participation, which limits their performance. This is why it is essential to create a safe environment for them. Reflection as future teachers. This whole analysis shows the importance of creating a safe and comfortable learning environment. Students need to feel that making mistakes is totally normal and is part of the learning process, especially when developing speaking skills. Professors need to include activities that encourage participation because interaction is key when learning a new language. And we conclude that students learn more effectively if they use the new language whenever possible.
Now, everyone will answer the three questions proposed in the activity guide. So, what innovate English learning activity would you propose to address the problem? To address this problem, I propose an innovate activity called Let's Talk with Kahoot. I choose this activity because it combines a speaking practice with gamification, which helps reduce students' anxiety. In this activity, students don't just choose answer, they also explain them orally, which encourage real communication. What makes it innovate is that it turns a common digital tool into an interactive speaking opportunity. Additionally, the game-like environment helps students feel more relaxed, so they are less afraid of making mistakes. For this reason, students participate more actively and gradually build confidence in speaking English. Second question, what digital tools or resource would you use for this activity? For this activity, I would mainly use Kahoot as a digital tool. Kahoot allows us to create interactive and gamified quiz that make learning more engaging. In addition, we will use video conference platforms such as Zoom or Google Meet, since the activity takes place in a virtual classroom. These platforms allow students to participate orally and interact with their classmates. We also use gamification as a strategy because it helps reduce anxiety and increase motivation. Overall, these tools create a dynamic and supportive environment for practicing English. These tools are effective because they are combined technology with active learning. And the third question is, how would you assess the impact of this activity on language learning? To assess the impact of this activity, we would use both formative and summative assessment. First, through formative assessment, the teacher would observe students' participation and provide continuous feedback during the activity. This helps identify improvements in confidence and speaking performance. Second, we would use summative assessment such as short speaking tasks, role plays, or video recordings. These tasks allow us to evaluate students' progress over time. In this way, we can measure not only their language development but also their level of participation and confidence when speaking English. So, this approach allows us to evaluate both the learning process and the final results. It also helps us see if students feel more confident and less anxious when speaking. That's it. Thank you so much.
Hello, the answer for the question one is I will propose innovative activity called Sweet Cuisine Learning and through a design project. This activity is a based up on project design learning when students create debug their own services. They work in group and take different roles such as production, marketing, finance, and sales. Through this project, students learning and using English in a real, real-life context. They expand their vocabulary related to food, cuisines, and communities communication will improve their speaking and writing skills. This activity is motivated because I connect language learning with real world experience, making learning more meaningful, interactive, and engaging for students. Question 2. For this activity, I will use a digital tools such as Canva, create menus, poster, and promotional material. I will also include artificial intelligence to to help the student generate ideas, promote their write and practice English. These tools support creativity, collaboration, and learning development, making the learning process more dynamic and motivation. Question 3. To assess the impact of this activity, I will use different strategies. First, I will observe students particip- participant and their using during the project. Second, I will evaluation. There is final project, social presentation, poster, and videos final. Finally, I will include field assessment and perfect back so a student can reflect in their learning process. Is what I will mean to say with much vocabulary, communicated and confident in easy English important. Thank you for asking.
Innovate activity is a speaking up challenge. In this activity, students will participate in a series of speaking challenges using AI tools. As they complete each challenge, they will receive baggage such as brave speaker, good pronunciation, or team player. Points are given for participation, not for perfection, which helps reduce the fear of making mistakes. The first challenge is that each student will record three short audios. The first one is a short presentation, then speak about something that I like to do, and then something that they did the last date. The second challenge is to upload their recordings to Elsa Speak, where they can receive feedback and correct the pronunciation mistakes. And the third challenge is to work in pairs to create a short dialogue about any topic that they choose. For this activity, we use some tools like IA pronunciation tool, Else Speak, gamification strategies, baggage, points, missions, and voice recording tool, Book a Room. The impact of this activity can be assessed by observing students' participation and progress. If more students speak and feel confident, it shows reduced anxiety. Teachers can also compare recordings to see improvement in pronunciation and fluency. In addition, feedback from tools like Elsa Speaks and students' reflections can show both languages and emotional progress.
For the problem we've been working on, I designed an activity that is called collaborative storytelling, and it is designed to reduce anxiety, to encourage participation, to practice speaking skills. And the whole thing is about creating a fantasy story. So the students in the class will be divided in small groups, in groups of 3 people or even in pairs. And as I told you before, the whole thing is about creating a short fantasy story that students then will have to read out loud. I chose a tool that is called Padlet, and it's a virtual tool where you can create a board using images, using music, even text. And I find it really useful, and it's a way to um, kind of designing, and I find it um, that it goes with the vibe of the whole activity. And finally, the assessment will focus on first participation, then grammar, pronunciation is really important too, and interaction. And what will the teacher evaluate? First, the student's performance, and also the confidence they show when speaking.
Okay, I propose an activity called Role Play Mystery Speaking Without Pressure. This activity encourages spontaneous speaking and fluency by immersing students in a collaborative mystery solving game. Students are assigned secret rules in virtual breakout rooms and must interact to find a hidden object or identify a secret character by asking simple questions. The focus shifts from worrying about mistakes to solving the puzzle together, which helps reduce anxiety and builds confidence. Okay, what digital tools or resources would you use for this activity? Okay, I will use several digital tools to support this activity effectively. Zoom or Teams breakout rooms to create small private groups where students can speak comfortably. Google Jamboard or Miro as a shared visual space where groups post their solutions collaboratively. Canva to design engaging digital mission cards that provide each students with their secret role and information. Additionally, a linguistic lifeline with key vocabulary and sentence starters is shared on a screen to support students during the activity and prevent them from feeling stuck. Okay, how will you assess the impact of this activity on languages learning? Okay, I will assess the impact by observing increased participation and spontaneous speaking during breakout sessions, comparing it more to more traditional speaking activities. I will gather students' feedback through an anonymous surveys to measure reductions in anxiety and increases in confidence. The collective solution post on Jamboard will be evaluated for the use of vocabulary and sentence structures, focusing on communication rather than errors. Over time, I will track improvements in fluency and willingness to participate by reviewing recordings or notes of their interactions. This approach aligns with crashing affective filter hypothesis by creating a low-stress environment that promotes language acquisition.